Okay, so before I get into this video, I kind of want to at least put a disclaimer here that this is my first YouTube upload, and I've been debating with myself on what I should be doing for my first video. And for a good while, I thought I should just do a simple introductory video for my channel, explain how it's going to be a gaming channel and whatnot. But then I realized that if I'm going to put myself out there, then I need to do something that's actually worth watching. Which brings me to the topic of this video, Warframe, a game that I've been with since March 2013. I found out about the game from a friend that was playing the closed beta, and he let me play on his account a few times, and I was hooked. I went so far as becoming one of the founders and spending a lot more money than I cared to admit on the game. I mean a crap ton. And I can go on and on about all the achievements I have in Warframe, but that's not the point of why I'm bringing this up. In fact, I'm not trying to flex on anyone, I'm rather trying to highlight that Warframe is actually important enough to me to make a first video, even if it would screw me in the long run for the YouTube algorithm. And to be perfectly honest with myself, I wanted to do a series or something to give back to the game that got me into online gaming, because I don't want to see this game die. And as it's going to die a death of apathy. Because at a certain point, there's not going to be enough new players to be able to come in, because word would have gone around that there's no reason to play Warframe. I mean, you already have Angry Joe giving you an unintentional roasting during your TennoCon live stream.
Good, I want the difficulty to be high.
I think it's the same with every part of Warframe though. It's only ever difficult if you're a new player and everyone else just all the content. And so I'm hoping they go really high difficulty.
Right, it's difficult to scale though. They need to scale.
Because they tried fixing that like a year ago and it's still stupid easy. Like a good player with good mods will one-shot everything up to like ridiculous difficulties.
Yeah, imagine what that's going to be like whenever every single player that has like over 2,000 hours in the game starts giving the same message to all potential new players. Eventually, your good marketing strategies aren't going to be able to outweigh that. I mean, World of Warcraft has already found that out. Alright, now that I've rambled on for at least 2 minutes or so, let me wrap up this intro by saying that if I've intrigued you at all, consider hitting that subscribe button and hitting that bell so you know whenever I post a new video. Just be warned that I'm not dedicating this channel just to Warframe. And one more thing, if you think Warframe needs a dash of Endgame in it, then please like and share this video if you could. It would actually really help out. Okay, now that we got that out of the way, we can jump right on into the video. So, when I started to plan this video, I asked myself, what would good endgame content look like in Warframe? So I started to look at a bunch of different games for good examples. And the more I looked, the more I started to see a trend that made me realize that I was asking the wrong question. You see, I was asking myself what would make good content for endgame, and not so much what made it different from normal content. Because what I've found is that it isn't so much about content as it is about progression. And what I mean by this is that all of the games that I've looked at thus far, be them MMOs like Final Fantasy XIV, Guild Wars 2, ESO, etc., or even some single-player games, they all design their games to revolve around a certain point that they build up to. And once the players reach that point, the game changes fundamentally. Now, this is usually always going to be a final boss or the final mission. Now, this is game design 101, but Warframe doesn't just lack this critical point that these games build up to. Its progression system is kind of devoid of any logical sense once you look at it in the grand scheme of things. Because what Warframe is trying to pull off is a story system that progresses vertically While the power and mod system doesn't really follow a horizontal or a vertical pattern in its design. It's just kind of a little bit here, a little bit there, and it's this part that makes no sense, and it destroys the progression system of the game. And to better illustrate what I mean by this, I want to look at the games Final Fantasy XIV and Guild Wars 2. Two games that are actually pretty different, but they share a few things in common that Warframe can really learn from. The first being how interwoven the story and the leveling system are. Now, with Guild Wars 2, it de-emphasizes the story in favor of showing the player the world and making sure they know how to use their character's class and teaching them the game's mechanics. And once you hit max level for the first time, the game stopped telling you what to do and just kinda throws it up in the air for you to decide on your own. But players never really feel overwhelmed by the choices, and there are actually quite a bit of choices that it opens up, like the elite specializations and the mastery system, which most players don't ever really have a problem with, since the game heavily foreshadowed those systems in the player's quest to level 80. In fact, the players that have the greatest difficulty with these systems are those that bought leveling boost and didn't actually play the game. Now, there is content that newer players have difficulty getting into, those being fractals and raids, and that's Guild Wars 2's high-end content, and I'll be getting into that later, probably in the second video. 14 is a little bit more traditional whenever it comes to laying out their content, with them dropping the expansion, which they in turn use that to teach newer players how to actually play the game and help veteran players reacclimate from all the changes that said expansion brings about. And once the players beat the main scenario quest, the game releases them to enjoy their post-expansion content, which usually includes a couple of expert dungeons and the extreme version of the trials that were featured in the expansion itself. And that leads into the content that we get from the patch cycle, which builds up in difficulty bit by bit over time as the game gets more and more patch releases. And that explains Final Fantasy XIV in a nutshell. Now, these two games, Guild Wars 2 and Final Fantasy XIV, uses two completely different progression systems. One's horizontally laid out and the other one is vertical. But both of them have one thing in common, and that's how they teach newer players. They dedicate the entire beginning experience and the main storyline to actually showing the players the game's mechanics and what they can actually do and what's expected of them. Now, it doesn't seem like it's connected that much, or that it should be really much of a problem to Warframe, but the fact that there is no early or mid-game keeps Warframe from actually getting any end-game content, because players have no standard by which you can say that they're ready for high-level content. It's like trying to balance a dungeon for both a level 10 player and a level 100 player. It won't fundamentally happen. The best you'll get is one side complaining. The worst, both categories of players will just quit in frustration. And all of this would be solved if DE would be the one to tell the community who are the veterans and who aren't, by way of a campaign of some sorts. That'll bring new and returning players up to the point of what you, the devs, consider to be the start of Endgame. Now, this is where I want to wrap up this video by quickly and broadly going over what it would take to make this type of campaign. But before I do that, I want to say thank you for anyone that's made it this far, and let me ask that you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you liked what I had to say. What DE needs to do is audit the mod and power system of the game and figure out what is the bare minimum for a player to have an in-game ready build, and take that and conglomerate it with the story of the game and make a extended tutorial that gets the player ready. Then take all the leftover mods and make them the rewards that people will be grinding for after they finish the story. And you can use that as a build-up for higher end content. Now, before I go, there is going to be a part 2 to this where I actually go into what I think would be perfect for some in-game content and what to do about that. And I'm also planning on doing an entire video of where I go through in much more detail on how to redo Warframe's progression system. And with that, hope to see you in the next video.